In 2024, a team of researchers announced something that quietly rewrites who gets to have a name. For a long time, naming was treated as one of the clearest lines separating humans from everything else. The idea that you can invent an arbitrary sound, assign it to a specific individual, and have that sound mean nothing except that one, specifically. It turns out we're not the only species doing this, and the way scientists finally proved it is stranger than the discovery itself. Start with African elephants because this is the case that changed the conversation. Researchers led by Mickey Pardo, working with Cornell University and Colorado State University, spent years recording elephant rumbles, the deep, mostly infrasonic calls elephants use to communicate across distance, and ran them through a machine learning model trained to detect patterns invisible to the human ear. The question they were testing was specific. When one elephant called out to another, was the call simply a copy of a sound associated with the target elephant, the way a parrot might mimic a name it's heard? Or was it something else? The model found that elephants could correctly identify which elephant a call was directed toward based on the call itself, even when researchers stripped out any imitation of the target's own vocal signature. That distinction matters enormously. A parrot repeating "Polly back" doesn't understand naming, it's echoing a sound. What the elephants were doing looked structurally different, assigning an arbitrary vocal label to a specific individual, the same basic operation underneath a human name. In playback experiments, elephants reacted more strongly and approached faster when they heard a call researchers had identified as their own label, compared to a label meant for a different elephant in the same herd. They weren't just recognizing a familiar voice, they were recognizing that they, specifically, had been called. Dolphins arrived at something similar decades earlier, through a completely different mechanism. Every bottlenose dolphin develops what researchers call a signature whistle within the first few months of life, a unique whistle contour, distinct from any other dolphins that effectively functions as its own name. What makes the dolphin case especially compelling is what happens next. Other dolphins learn to copy that signature whistle and use it specifically to address that individual, calling out to a particular dolphin by mimicking the sound that dolphin uses for itself. Researcher Vincent Janik at the University of St. Andrews documented dolphins responding selectively when they heard their own signature whistle played back through an underwater speaker, even when the whistle had been artificially generated and stripped of any of the individual vocal characteristics that would let them recognize it as coming from a familiar dolphin. The response wasn't to a voice, it was to the label itself. Mother dolphins have also been recorded calling out a calf signature whistle repeatedly during separation, essentially calling a specific name into open water until the right animal responds. Budgerigars, the small parakeets common in households worldwide, do something that looks almost like the origin story for how naming might begin at all. Researchers studying wild budgerigar colonies found that parent birds develop a unique contact call for each chick before it's ever left the nest, distinct from calls used for its siblings. As the chick grows, it doesn't just recognize this call. It incorporates elements of it into its own adult vocal identity, effectively growing into a version of the name its parents gave it before it could fly. Other birds in the colony learn to use that same call to get the individual's attention specifically, the way a room full of people might all learn and use someone's first name after being introduced once. Unlike the elephant findings, which required machine learning to detect a subtle pattern, the budgerigar case is almost embarrassingly direct. Birds are functionally naming their children. Sperm whales complicate the picture in an interesting direction. Their vocalizations, called codas, are rhythmic patterns of clicks that vary by clan and appear to function partly like dialects, distinguishing which cultural group a whale belongs to. The Cetacean Translation Initiative, a large-scale ongoing research project using underwater recording arrays and machine learning modeled partly on the same techniques used in the elephant study, has found evidence suggesting individual whales may have identifiable click pattern variations layered on top of the shared clan dialect, a kind of accent within an accent that could theoretically function as an individual marker. Researchers are explicit that this is less settled than the elephant or dolphin findings. It's an active area of investigation, not a confirmed result, but it points toward the same underlying pattern potentially existing in one of the most vocally complex animals on the planet. What connects elephants, dolphins, and budgerigars is a distinction that matters more than it might initially seem. None of these are simply animals recognizing familiar sounds. Recognizing a familiar voice is common across the animal kingdom and doesn't require anything like a name. You can identify your friend's voice on the phone without them saying anything that functions as an assigned label. What these three species are doing is different in kind. They're using an arbitrary sound as a symbol that stands in for a specific individual, a sound that carries no inherent connection to that individual's own voice or behavior, purely by shared agreement across the social group. That's not memory. That's closer to language. None of this means an elephant experiences its own name the way a person does, wrapped in identity, memory, and self-concept. Researchers are careful about that distinction, the same way they're careful with claims about grief or deception in other species. What the data does establish is that the human assumption that naming individuals is a uniquely human cognitive leap, requiring language in the full sense, doesn't hold up against the evidence. Multiple, completely unrelated evolutionary lines, separated by tens of millions of years, independently arrived at the same solution to the same problem. In a social group large enough that you need to call out one specific individual among many, you invent a sound just for them. So somewhere in a herd of elephants right now, one specific animal is being called by something that functions structurally exactly like its name, a sound invented for it, recognized by it, and used by no one else to mean anyone but them. It has never been written down, never been spoken by a human, and would have gone completely undetected without a machine learning model built specifically to listen for it. It existed the entire time. We just didn't have anything sensitive enough to hear it.